As you may already know, or not if you live under a rock, the First Descendant is a third-person looter shooter being developed by Nexon, with it taking inspiration from many other looter shooters within the genre with heavy influences from games like Warframe. The game has been getting a lot of hype, a lot of interest, and a lot of marketing, and with all of the trailers and videos and devlogs, etc., it looks genuinely very pretty. That's Unreal Engine 5 at work for you, I suppose. But underneath all that paint, I guess I'd like to give my thoughts about the game's beta test, my experiences with the gameplay loop, and the game's potential going forward to launch. I'll say it here as clearly as I can and elaborate on the point through the video. The game is a generic looter shooter that looks great but lacks substance, or for lack of a better word, a soul that will keep people invested and playing in the long run. Let me explain with some pros first. With a game like Warframe, Destiny, Outriders, Division, or any of the bigger looter shooters, every game has had a unique mechanic or selling point that makes the game stand out from the rest of the competition. Some games do it really well, where they're able to carve out a niche for themselves and a following, while others are not as successful, but still offer something different and unique that keeps people playing them. The First Descendant, on the other hand, feel like it takes a lot of the popular game design elements of the aforementioned games and it kit bashes it into a new game on a new engine that makes it look very pretty, and there's no doubt about it, the game is genuinely beautiful. Unreal Engine 5 is putting in some serious work, and it's a great example of what to expect from games built on Unreal Engine 5 going forward. The First Descendant's ecosystem is more or less the same as Warframe's. Even the process of building weapons and different characters follows the similar mechanic as Warframe. For example, let's say, to build Bunny, you need to craft 4 different pieces, which you then combine in a research for 12 hours to get the character after. The game also features a Forma system and a potato system like Warframe. You know, these are terminologies which you would know if you've played Warframe. And in order for you to upgrade and become a lot stronger in the game as well, you take advantage of these systems. This upgrading system serves a purpose though. You need to have upgraded mods and gear to be able to take on the challenge of the Void Intercepts, which come in normal and hard mode difficulty. And Void Intercepts are essentially a boss rush system where you spawn in a room that looks like Warframe's original simulacrum and have a timer to overcome the boss's HP and the mechanics involved in that particular fight to defeat it. Killing the bosses will drop resources, mods, weapons, and will allow you to get parts for weapons and descendants, which you can then use to craft. So it's going to be an integral part of the gameplay loop. The gunplay feels great, and having a wide range of weapons is also fantastic. From SMGs, assault rifles, machine guns, to hand cannons, scout rifles, and beam rifles, and then also heavy snipers, shotguns, and grenade launchers, the First Descendant's gun variety and gunplay feels a little reminiscent of Division's with the over-the-shoulder style shooting. The developer also updated the sounds a lot since the previous beta, especially the weapon sounds, and they sound a lot better, a lot more meatier, if you please. And thankfully, they also got rid of the absolutely horrifying battle quips every time your character reloaded their guns. Why now? Stay frosty. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to give you PTSD there. The different descendants come with their own unique powers and mechanics that are tied into these powers. After playing almost all of the classes from the current and the previous beta, I have a decent idea of how each class plays. I haven't spent that much time min-maxing because, again, these are betas and progress will get wiped ahead of launch. But based on first impressions, there are some classes that are great and others that feel terrible to use or play with, but we'll get to that in a bit. Now let's see. I've seen a lot of comments from people saying that this is a Nexon game, so it's going to be bound to be pay to win, filled with microtransactions and all that. So let's talk about that. The current game beta has customization added that is class-based, weapon skins, spawn-in effects similar to Destiny 2's transmat effects, changeable grappling hook model, UI theme and name card customization, which is similar to Warframe, the eCiv skins, which are essentially like Warframe ephemeras, and emotes, which are common to any looter shooter in this day and age. Last beta, there was no customization as far as I remember, and through popular request, it was added for this beta. Honestly, probably a good idea considering this game is supposed to be free to play. They need some way to generate income to keep supporting the game for the long haul, assuming it's designed for the long haul. That doesn't necessarily make this game pay to win though, more like pay to progress, similar to how Warframe has the ability to speed up crafting using platinum. Having said that, there is one thing that Warframe does better though. Platinum in Warframe is tradable. If you're patient and not addicted to buying everything shiny, you can potentially play this game fully free to play as well without buying any of the cosmetics. What remains to be seen is how the shop may potentially change when the game launches. The enemy variety is nice, ranging from trash mobs to elites, and then you have all of those mobs which can come with modifiers as well, such as shielded, unstoppable, elemental infused, etc., which adds another layer of difficulty. Since the previous beta, it looks like the devs have also increased the mod density in the game, which is very appreciated, since it doesn't feel like you have too much downtime between waves. It's just like any other looter shooter that builds upon different layers of enemy types to give you a different range of combat and difficulty to overcome, instead of everything just being painted with the same brush. Although the AI for the enemies kind of feels stupid. They usually just strafe slowly while shooting projectiles, and while you can dodge most of them, when there's 20 enemies in a wide cone in front of you shooting at you at the same time, it can get a little bit harder to dodge and potentially survive, and they can shred you as well. More on that later. With the pros out of the way, let's talk about some of the cons. One of the biggest problems this game has is animation locks for a variety of things. I get it. You put in time to make fancy animations for your characters, but no one enjoys being stuck in a 2-second animation to equip Lepic's gun before you can even fire it, while your teammates are just gunning down all the groups and elite targets before you're even ready to shoot your first shot. No one enjoys using Kyle's ult, killing 3 to 4 enemies and being stuck in a 1-second recovery animation where you cannot move and you have no damage reduction or any form of protection, so enemies that you didn't kill will just laugh in your face and gun you down while you're in the recovery animation. No one likes jumping from a high place and being stuck in a recovery animation for a couple of seconds because you landed from a high place. Realistically, just remove the animation and don't add fall damage, considering we're supposed to be these powerful descendants anyway. But if you can't compromise, then I'd rather have some small amounts of chip fall damage instead of stupid animation locks. Momentum. Good God, this is by far one of the most annoying problems the game had in the previous beta, and they still have not resolved it in this beta or changed it. And I get the feeling that this is intended and they will not address it, but I'm going to talk about it regardless. You can get body blocked by enemies as well as teammates when you're in a mission. It doesn't even look like you have to touch them. Just being within a meter seems to have collision, and it just kills your entire momentum and movement. We know that the First Descendant team has the tech to remove collisions from teammates and enemies. They added that as a movement thing for Valby, and you have no collision in the home city with other players either. Please, for the love of God, remove collisions. It serves no purpose other than causing frustration and annoyance. I hate it in every other game that adds it, and I hate it here too. Especially when you're playing Bunny, a character designed for speed and movement, and you can't even utilize it properly because the second you touch something, whether it's a teammate, an enemy, or even a rock on the floor, you just stop dead, and that is usually enough to get you killed as well in the higher tier content. Another point is lack of CC immunity. It just blows my mind that this game has no form of CC immunity. You can get chain frozen by 2 to 3 trackers in a high level defense mission if you're not paying attention and get hit by a stray shot that freezes you instantly. There are 20 more shots coming your way before the freeze timer even ends, which usually results in you dying. Even a simple half-second CC immunity phase between CCs from enemies should be enough to give players a fighting chance. You also have no form of damage reduction from certain abilities being activated or during casted animation for some of the abilities, such as Blair's ultimate, Lepic's arm cannon ultimate, Kyle's flight mode ultimate, etc. If the devs are adamant on keeping animations they added, then please, for the love of God, add iframes to those animations or heavy damage reduction. On the topic of different classes and their abilities, some just felt really underwhelming. Again, I did not min-max, so perhaps that opinion will change when the game launches and I get to spend more time on the characters to min-max and see how they all work. But from what I've been playing in both the betas, there are some clear winners in terms of characters and their ability sets, which are great for ad clear, bossing, and a couple capable of both roles. Jaber, Bunny, and Kyle seem to have great boss DPS potential through their abilities. While Bunny and Kyle can hit really hard with their abilities, Glaze abilities essentially buffer weapons, which make her viable for most of the boss fights. Reyna's poison-based kit also looks really good for debuffing when you acquire the appropriate mods. On the other hand, classes like Blair and VSF seemed rather underwhelming for boss damage. Blair's kit also just felt really tedious to use outside of the flamethrower ability. Since his first ability creates fire patches on the ground around you, you essentially would have to run into packs of enemies to put down patches. This makes it a lot more dangerous since you're likely to die that way, especially in higher tier content. The second ability returns MP and gives some defense, which is fine, but again, the gameplay loop for the first two abilities just doesn't feel good. The ult suffers from the same animation locking problem as the other characters, and the effects on the floor for Blair or Freyna or any other character that have it, they are just too subtle or hard to see, which makes it really hard to see what it's actually affecting. Make them more obvious with either an AoE ring or something else where it shows you when you cast your abilities and the size of it as well, instead of forcing me to guess where I put my abilities on. In fact, Valby's new abilities, which are all AoE pools on the floor, are usually a lot more visible. Make it similar to that. This brings me to my next point. Every looter shooter, or any multiplayer co-op game to be honest, should have a ping system. Not everyone uses in-game voice. I definitely don't, because when I'm streaming, I just don't trust people to not bust out some slurs or something else questionable, or they'll just have the worst setup imaginable. So by default, I have in-game voice off. Other players have it off as well because they don't have a microphone or they just don't want to talk. Regardless of the reason, a ping system to be able to communicate with other players is important, whether this is asking for teammates to focus on a specific enemy or on a mechanic or about a boss or whatever. A simple ping system with different icons for different types of pings could work, but at this point, just a simple ping system with just a single icon for the ping is the bare minimum that they can do. Now, while this point may not necessarily be a con, it is definitely food for thought to keep in mind. For the betas, the developers more or less gave players access to the characters, increased XP gains, loot drops, resource drops, reduced crafting costs, etc. We as players are now accustomed to that level of XP gain, especially since you have to level up multiple characters multiple times to min-max for modding. I really hope that the devs don't nerf the XP and drop rates going into launch, because that single move will do more irreparable damage to the game than servers not working on launch. I mean, if you need examples, look at Wayfinders, look at Diablo 4. The Void Intercept fights are interwoven with gameplay of the campaign in a way where you have to kill bosses to get parts for the different classes and legendary weapons to craft. And thus, they are also part of the endgame for the First Descendant. Already in the beta, I've been seeing people who are using LFGs, or they're just leaving squads if the squad composition doesn't have certain classes in them, because some classes are just better at bossing than others. And I'm also seeing other people who are just standing AFK in boss encounters or even in the defense modes, hoarding XP but not playing the game. This is not really going to be so much of an issue for me, since I will be playing with friends or people in the community at some point or the other, but this is certainly going to be an experience that the majority of players who are either solo or don't have people to play with at the time or are pogging for that particular activity are going to have to deal with. I do hope that this can be potentially resolved by some manner, but I think that's a problem that doesn't have a simple solution, and at least one that I can't offer right now. So I do hope that there is some way the devs can deter people from doing such things. I didn't mean to go on a rant or a tangent, but you know, here we are. For those of you who just want a TLDR of the video's points, then here they are. The game is fun, but it is as generic as it can potentially get, with a lot of ideas and mechanics that are inspired or taken from other popular looter shooters such as Warframe or Destiny or Division, etc. The game flows well in terms of its combat, the enemy density is good, and weapon variety is great, as well as the sound design. Visually, it looks incredible thanks to Unreal Engine 5, although it does have some frame dips and does need more optimization still. It has a lot of gameplay mechanic based issues such as lack of CC immunity, getting chain CC'd, ability cost times being too long and clunky, falling from high places locking you in animations with no damage reduction for using any abilities that lock you in animations. Some classes just feel rather underwhelming because of their power set, while others feel great because of lack of cast time or just they play well. And potentially you also lose momentum because you go too close to a teammate or an enemy or a rock on the ground, bringing you to a full stop, resulting in your death or close to it. Having said all of that, don't take this in any of the wrong way. I really did enjoy the betas, and I'm really looking forward to playing the launch of the game, playing it on stream with friends and the people in the community. I hope that the devs will take all the feedback on board and make some changes and optimizations ahead of launch. And while I'm looking forward to playing this game, I do hope that they take their time to make a good game with a great gameplay loop as well as a solid end game, instead of something that I play for a week and then drop and go back to my other games, because this looter shooter had more hype than substance to it. Competition is always great. Look at Nvidia versus AMD or Intel versus AMD. As a consumer, this will always be a win for us if there are multiple games trying to compete with each other and making a better product, since variety is, after all, the spice of life and we get to enjoy it all. It would really suck if this game boils down to a week's worth of gameplay before it fades into obscurity like other looter shooters that had high potential but failed to cross the finish line, such as Anthem or Outriders. What were your thoughts on the beta so far? Do you think the game has potential, or will it be a flavor of the week type deal? I hope you enjoyed this video. Expect more content on the channel going forward, whether it's long form or short, and I shall see you in the next one.